call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Town of Norton Zoning Board of Appeals. It's 7:02, and we have two items on the agenda tonight, although I understand that the first listed item, which is 21 Samoset Street, applicant Dana Jr., appeal of building inspector's decision. We received a letter from Creed Law dated May 14, asking us to put this on to our next scheduled meeting, which, is it June 20?
June 20th.
June 20. I have a letter here, I don't know if you received it yet. It was up yesterday.
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
think.
right,
So I assume there's no reason not to do that if the applicant is asking for it, because they need some information from Verizon concerning the right-of-way, which Nick knows more about than any of us do at this point, but is there a motion to continue this to the next hearing, next meeting date, June 20 at 7 o'clock?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, no discussion. All those in favor, Mr. Tenori?
Yes.
Mr. Spangler?
Yes.
Mr. Noel votes yes, so thank you. And the next item is Island Brook. Is that Mr. Agostino?
Yes.
It is, Mr. Agostino, and I saw, yep, you're a trusty engineer here too. Sorry that you're sitting, looking at the back of our heads.
Come up here and
Yeah, you
tap
can-
dance if you're ready for me.
Yeah, sure, why don't you just step up, and
Sure.
Mr. Gallagher, you can as well. Thank you for coming back. I had, tell me where I'm wrong, because I'm sure I'm wrong. I had remembered last time that you were going to be working with town council on conditions, on the written conditions, and that hopefully we were going to get something to look at prior to tonight. And tell me what's come since the last meeting.
Yeah,
That's a
so,
good way to bring us up to speed, I guess.
Just going back to the beginning here, so November 2023, just last November, the applicant submitted what it was presenting as its final plans, and it asked the board to review them. Then there was the question about the permit expiration date, and you had consulted with town council on that. We had a hearing primarily discussing the permit expiration date back in March.
Yep.
Initially. And we'd asked the board to confirm that the permit doesn't expire until January of 2025. So that's still an open question before the board, and we're asking the board to.
Well, we did a decision after the last meeting.
Oh, so I thought that you were still double, triple checking the timeline.
I thought Amy was still,
We had 240Bs. We had.
Oh, there was another one, you're right.
Am I
Lynn
thinking of the
Sweet
other
was
one?
before you.
No,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, Lynn
Yeah.
Sweet was before you on the
Let me just mess everything up here right off the start tonight.
253 was last meeting.
That's the decision we did.
Yeah, so you extended that. We have not asked for extension, because at this point, we don't necessarily need one.
You're not Lynn
because-
Sweet?
Lynn's a good friend of mine, but no, Lynn's not here tonight, unfortunately.
You don't look anything like her.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I'll let her know you said that. So,
Go ahead, yes.
in any event, so that question's still before the board to confirm the expiration based on the timeline, and the only question that was up in the air was the date of the Housing Appeals Committee endorsed decision. The board was looking at the date that the board and the applicant signed their settlement agreement, but the operative date is the date that the HAC actually adopted and confirmed the decision, which makes the difference between like July of this year and January of next year.
Geez, the dates in the other application were similar too. That was June or January.
Right.
Yeah, so
Not a problem.
that's the reason for my,
So that question lingered before the board, and at the same time, we had done a comprehensive analysis at town council's suggestion of every condition in the permit relative to the plans that we submitted in November of 2023. And the few conditions that were implicated were with regard to phasing. And the board had identified a handful of concerns that they had on
Yeah.
the plans that we had submitted, regarding phasing, and it was primarily to ensure that if only phase one is built for whatever reason, that it's entirely self-sufficient, the engineering works, the water main is looped, the recreational facilities are accessible, and that the affordable units qualify under phase one as 1 out of every 4. So subsequent to that, the discussion at the last hearing was we were going to submit plans by before May 6th in advance of this hearing, so that the board could look at the changes we made to address the concerns regarding phasing. We submitted those plans on May 2nd. I followed up with town council, and I know she's busy with several other matters as well. So I don't know whether she's provided any comment to the board, but it was essentially just to confirm that the remaining changes that were made are insubstantial. So the second request that's before the board is a determination that the plans before the board as the final plans are insubstantial, or an insubstantial change relative to the approved plans from the permit. And we're asking that the board make that determination based on the changes that we've made. And Frank is able to provide some detail, or if you'd like him to walk through how we made those changes. My letter dated May 2nd shows which sheets in the plan set were revised, as revised through April 22nd of 2024, and those changes address the concerns, again, to make sure the affordable units are evenly distributed, the stormwater management system is entirely self-sufficient in phase one, the water main for phase one is looped, and the recreational facilities will be fully functional within phase one.
Okay. So, barring questions from the board, I'll ask Mr. Gallagher to go through those new plan sheets. But no, we have not tied this down with town council, correct?
As far as I know, we haven't received anything from Amy.
Right. Certainly not since May 2nd. I mean, I think there was some back and forth around the time of the last meeting. But nothing further.
I thought she was going to look at that date, if I remember correctly.
She was just going to check the date. I could provide the date. It's really just a
Yeah.
matter of simple math to count the days, and
I don't think she was overly concerned with it, if I remember correctly. I think she just wanted to look at it and then get back to us, but she didn't.
Yeah.
I actually was kind of surprised that, I thought you two would have maybe worked that out.
I had followed up with her as well, and I know.
I think that's what was supposed
She's
to
on the
happen.
letter.
You two were supposed to.
I think
Yeah,
she's
and
CC'd on the letter, but
I
we
had
got,
sent subsequent emails as well, since I hadn't heard. But I know, I think that, to some extent, maybe she thought the board was gonna confirm that as well. I'm happy to walk through the days so that we can tie it down.
yeah, I don't think we had much doubt about the dates that were presented to us, but I know Amy wanted to confirm with the actual date on the papers as she has them. But the other question as to substantial versus, or insubstantial versus not insubstantial, that's magic language in the statute for 40Bs, that when a change is presented, we have to decide as an initial matter whether it's insubstantial or not insubstantial. And if it's not insubstantial, which is double negative, sorry, we then have to call for the opening of public hearing. Am I right that the only difference is, what, it has to be advertised again?
Right, yeah, you would
As a
hold a
public
public
hearing.
hearing on only the changes to the plan.
Yeah,
I would submit that the plan is identical. We've added detail as far as the phasing issue.
well, but that's what, I'm not comfortable calling the phasing element, or whether Mr. Gallagher's plans satisfy, the questions. I'm not comfortable doing that, saying that's an insubstantial change. No offense to council who's asking us to do that. I think we have to vote that this is a not insubstantial change, and thereafter hold public hearing on these questions, including hopefully, the appearance of an assistance of counsel. but of also other departments. I know the water department feels that they have a stake here and want to weigh in on this. And I understand this is a process that's, the guidance is that it all comes through the zoning board, but effectively, we can ask the water department to come and to tell us why this will or won't work.
So, if I could, Mr.
Yes, go
Chairman,
ahead.
a couple points. The regulations describe the process for submission of plans that include changes. And they describe instances where changes are substantial versus insubstantial. What they're really talking about is an increase in the number of units, a complete redesign of the development layout, going from for sale to rental. None of those changes are implicated in what we're doing here. These are really just details that allow the phasing to be confirmed as working according to this plan. So it doesn't implicate that. Also, we had submitted the plans, and the building department actually made comments, and I believe one of the comments came back from the water department. Is that correct, Frank? So these plans have been socialized throughout other boards in town.
This was a reduction, correct, based on
There's a reduction in the units.
the core, by 4, so.
Yeah,
But in one of the examples you gave is a change in the number of units, right? Which 4 could be determined insubstantial, but with the phasing, if you don't construct phase 2, that's obviously a major change in the number of units, right? And so, and we talked last time that's a possibility here, and that's one of the reasons why you want to phase it, is
So
the risk of financing.
yeah. In the same vein as your comment or question, that's another reason why I think this is not an insubstantial change, and that we have to go through the process of opening up this for public hearing on these changes, rather than just the administrative
So if I could
decisions we've been
recite,
making. Go ahead, Mr. Agostino.
it's not just a change in the number of units. So the following matters will generally be substantial changes. An increase of more than 10% of the height of the buildings, an increase of more than 10% in the number of housing units proposed, a reduction in the size of the site by more than 10% in excess of any decrease in the number of housing units proposed. So if we reduce the size of the site but keep the number of units the same, then the proportion's off. We're not reducing, it's proportionate
Yeah.
if only phase 1 were built. A change in building type, it's still single-family homes. A change of one form of housing tenure to another, that's again going from for sale to rental.
Where are you getting that from?
The regulations regarding chapter 40B and
Okay.
project changes. So, I think, so the original submission was in November. We've had several hearings on this now, and I know we're kind of waiting on, town council has weighed in. There is a 20-day period within which to make the determination, so, of substantial versus insubstantial. So I thought we would be prepared to make that change, that determination tonight, and, respectfully, based on the conditions and the description of what's substantial versus insubstantial, it's pretty clear that nothing we're doing here is a substantial change under the regulations.
Well, with all due respect, though, that's not an exhaustive list, and that says, as you just read, the following would constitute substantial. It doesn't say that nothing else can be a substantial change. I think that without guidance of counsel, I'm just not prepared to vote that this is an insubstantial change. I understand what you're saying, but the plans were just amended, and with the letter of May 2, I think that's the request for modification that we're going to rely on. And within the 20-day period, I see this as the vote on substantial versus insubstantial. I'm not arguing with what council's saying, but I'm not willing to accept and say this is insubstantial. If we say it's insubstantial, this is it. the plans go forward, the permit is modified. I think, and we clearly discussed last month and the month before, that we may need to hear from other people once the phasing plans were given us, which they've now been given us. I think that's the immediate question before us right now. We can hear, and we can hear from Mr. Gallagher, that's fine. I'm not closing that off at all. Would you like to do that at this point? And then make a determination, take a vote on substantial versus insubstantial after?
If we, so if we vote, let's say we vote substantial,
Yep.
then they have to go before a public hearing.
Well,
It would
this is a public meeting. We have to open
open, right,
a
right,
public
right.
hearing, and I would say, I would, of course, want to have the water department appear to tell us what their concerns are. There are emails in the file from Frank Fournier, to us, talking about the looping and the fact that they consider this a difference that they want to look at, how it impacts the town water and sewer plants that are
I
in
remember
place.
talking last week about the looping, and that was one of Amy's,
Yeah.
Ms. Questel's, that it definitely should be looped, because if you don't do the second phase, that it's self-sustained.
Right, and we can hear from Mr. Gallagher on that.
Right.
But I think the water department has already signaled that it needs to be heard.
So, if I could,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
The water department can certainly be heard. Again, Frank will speak to this, I believe they have been heard. They can certainly provide input without noticing a full public hearing and doing publication and having several more hearings. The other thing, the regulations provide that only those aspects of the project that have changed are at issue during the public hearing. So where these changes are
Understood.
technical in nature, it's really just a matter of if the concern is about the water department, let's have them look at it. I would suggest that if the board is uncomfortable with that tonight, although I certainly would urge the board, again, these plans were submitted originally back in November.
But they were changed last month, a few weeks ago. So we just
Very
got
minor changes.
Well, we were not in a position to be able to say that with any surety. I mean, I'm not an engineer, and I'm not in a position to say that. I understand what you're saying, I'm not arguing with you even,
Yeah,
but
so that's fine. I think, I would then ask, if there's any inclination to make that determination, I'd rather get town council's input, because I wish I was able to get in touch with her before the hearing. I reached out a few times. I know when we first met back in March, we wanted to make sure town council was available to communicate and correspond, and I know her schedule's taxing, so hopefully I can get some time to the extent we don't have these plans endorsed tonight. I think just anecdotally, you can see how time goes by. So, we were talking about how there was some passage of time on the original permit. Time does fly in these things, and I think we're going on 7 months into the application to endorse the final plan. So it's all fine. I mean, we want to make sure, the board is comfortable with the final endorsement. I just think, let's make sure town council has the bandwidth to do that if the board's going to rely heavily on town council's input here, so that we can, have a productive meeting next time.
I certainly agree. And as I said at the beginning, and I was thinking about this project, not the other one, but I understood that there was going to be work done on the conditions specifically, and that passed back and forth. Has that happened?
That's been completed. So she
That's been
commented.
completed.
She commented, I believe she said she was pleasantly surprised with the conditions compliance matrix. We
Okay.
actually broke
Right.
down every condition,
Yep.
went through each one, provided commentary where we
did look
thought
at
there
that
was
at
some
the last meeting.
deviation.
Yep.
And the only thing that stuck out as a deviation was this phasing issue.
Right.
So that's what we thought we were going to be able to resolve this evening. And we can provide a presentation on it, and then if the board's still uncomfortable with making the determination of insubstantial, then, maybe I would suggest, rather than going through the trouble of advertising a public hearing to talk about a looped water main, I would suggest deferring to get town council's input on it, and then you can make that determination administratively. You don't necessarily even need to do it at a meeting. So I don't know if, and certainly you can consult with town council through the chair on that as well. I think, my goal, we've taken some of the board's time during public hearings at this point. We want to make sure that we're moving this forward.
Understood and agreed. What's the pleasure of the board?
One question, so the modifications that have been done were in part and parcel from the court, correct?
No, so breaking, if through the chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, there was a settlement agreement.
That's what I meant, I'm sorry.
Yep. The settlement agreement was entered as the order of the Housing Appeals Committee. It included modifications to the original 94 conditions.
Yep.
Okay? Town council took our matrix, looked at the plan that was submitted,
Yep.
and other boards, I believe the water department received it, and Frank can speak more to that, but looked at the plan and went through the changes, and Frank in the matrix said, this was complied with, this was complied with, this was complied with, as far as the plans that were submitted in November of last year.
Correct.
So those plans from November were vetted.
Yep.
And those plans, when we submitted them to the board, we were asserting these comply with the original approval, endorse our plans, and then we'll go forward with final permitting and building inspector approvals and get the project built from there. The exceptions to the approval from the November plan set were the issues that were raised with regard to phasing.
Yep.
So they were identified by town council, and we said, okay, we will address those changes. So now that those changes have been made, we submitted them on May 2nd and said, hey, we're changing the plan. Here are the changes that deviate from, we submitted it as a request for change, because town council had suggested, this is a modification, request a modification. So we've engaged in that process. And that's what we're asking for approval on, is to say,
Yeah.
all right, the things on phasing that were identified in that matrix as open are resolved to our satisfaction as insubstantial, and then we can move forward with endorsement. If that helps.
I think the only comment I had, I took down some notes from our last discussion. We had discussion about what constitutes infrastructure, and I think Attorney Wessel agreed with defining that somewhere. Has that been addressed?
When we talked about infrastructure, could you please remind me of the context?
I
Because
think
my notes didn't.
Sure, the concern was that if it's now phased, there was a note in the conditions, I think, that said all infrastructure would be installed as part of phase one. And we wanted to ensure that infrastructure included,
Yeah.
roadways, utilities, street lighting, catch basins, retention, detention ponds, all of that stuff
For phase one.
for phase one.
Yeah, so the plans through notes describe exactly what will be built in phase one. The goal of the phasing is to not build the road in the back and disturb that and just let it sit and overgrow. And the discussion was, hey, wait a second, your recreational facilities are in the back, we need to include those. So we've revised the,
I don't see things like utility plans in here, though.
Is that the,
I see lot layout,
The
plans,
latest
plan profile, grading,
so it's
site
sheets,
details, erosion control.
sheets 15 and 16 are erosion control.
Yeah, I'm thinking of electrical infrastructure, fire hydrants,
That's
all of that kind of stuff.
It's all in there.
So why don't I defer to Frank, and Frank can show you what was addressed as far as phasing, and then hopefully we can come up with a plan moving forward.
I am in favor of hearing from Mr. Gallagher for
And
now, and then I think we have to vote though on whether it's substantial or insubstantial.
So-
Again, if it's insubstantial, we vote that tonight. The plan is the plan and it goes forward without further, review or input.
My only comment on that, Mr. Chairman, if it's the board's pleasure after hearing Frank that we're dealing with substantial changes, we could certainly by consent extend the deadline for you to make that determination. There is a 20-day
Can you?
deadline. Yes, we
By
absolutely.
consent?
Yeah,
Because I wondered about that, actually. I'm not sure we've done that in the past, but
we can certainly waive our rights.
you're
on those
saying
deadlines.
it's
Yeah,
even to make that determination,
absolutely.
you'd rather us hear from town council on that.
Yeah, because I think just going through the trouble of opening a whole public hearing just to talk about, the
Okay.
engineering
All
details.
right.
I
Well,
think
we can, let's hear from Mr. Gallagher and take our questions for a little bit, at least as far as we have here without assistance.
Yep.
Go ahead, Mr. Gallagher.
So, first comment that I got from the last meeting was show the affordable units. So on the cover sheet, what we did was we shaded in each one.
And just for the record, is that plan one
Yes, that's,
dated
it's dated.
for 22, 24?
Yes, the revision date.
Got it.
So,
I don't know, the version that I have that's dated 4/22/24 doesn't have colored lots like that.
really,
Are they designated in another way?
It's
or-
just shaded, darker.
Yeah, I got it.
Sheet one?
I think so, yeah. Sheet
Huh.
one with
Oh, am I
revision block 4/22/24,
How am I looking
yeah.
at a different one?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I opened this off of
You-
Brian's email. So,
Uh,
apologize if I'm looking at the
No,
wrong version.
maybe this was downloaded from OpenGov?
It's in the
Um,
Dropbox.
Yeah, so the
This is in
version,
Dropbox, right,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I didn't take it from Dropbox. This came from Brian on May 13th
No.
in an email attachment, the one that I'm looking at, so it must be different.
Well, here, do you want to,
That's okay, that's okay.
okay?
all right.
And it's that up there, right? That's
Yeah, the same one
projected.
as Brian.
They won't ship.
Yeah, I see that there is.
Maybe Brian's did you photocopy it or something?
That's
and
okay.
send
You
it
can
out?
keep going.
It's the same thing I'm
We don't
looking
need
at.
to-
Okay.
Thank you, though.
So that's what we did, and we put
Yeah,
a little key to it and listed the affordable units. So that's one thing, just.
and how many are in phase one?
Let's see, let me just flip the page.
What is it?
8. I see 8.
Oh, eight, there's eight. Okay, so, as we said before, it's the left, it's the pod of development closest to the entrance of East Main Street.
Yeah.
And it includes 12 and 13, that included in phase one, right?
I think it went between 12 and 13, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I think 13 went on the second phase.
correct,
Oh,
correct. So there are 9 affordables in that first phase. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 in the second phase. And, just to give you a little bit of proportion, the first phase at this point, since we kind of expanded it, really represents about 2/3 of the project now. It was more or less 50/50, but we expanded it so that it's,
why do I only count 8? And
I only count 8 too.
maybe, did you just misspeak?
Yeah, it's not that one though,
8,
right?
12,
That's outside
16,
phase one, the
20.
one you're pointing to right now.
no, that's in phase one now.
Oh,
Wait,
If you look at the line,
ah,
this is all
Well, what
now
sheet is
part of
that?
phase one. That's sheet 16.
That's right.
okay. Let me get that.
Okay,
I remember.
see the phasing line now.
Yeah, because we talked about that,
So that
right?
moved up.
Yeah, all right, now I remember.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that, well, one thing in particular, after our meeting, when I went back and looked, I realized
Oh,
that
I see.
some of the drainage that was from phase one actually discharges in this detention basin. So I couldn't really end phase one, because this stormwater would just basically dead end. So I had to
Okay.
expand it, number one, to include the recreational areas, and then just for the drainage sake, I had to expand it to include this stormwater basin.
See, that's,
What's the vehicular, so how does a fire truck get back out of that?
does the road just end
Neighborhood.
at the limit of phase one line?
As it is, yeah. It does.
Yeah, I think that changes the conversation quite a bit, right?
Where does the water pipe lie here? I don't know if that's something you've seen on this, Brian.
Oh, the water main?
Yeah, the water main, to get a looped system.
So let me fall
Yep.
back for a minute
Go ahead.
on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So right now, right, we have a water main out in East Main Street, and we tap it here, and we run it all the way around the project, and then it loops back here, but it also comes off the road in this spot. These dashed lines are an easement, and it connects to that same water main in East Main Street.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's really the loop right here. That portion just connects back on itself. But the loop, and it is right there, right? It loops back on this main in East Main Street. That's been that way
Yeah.
since 2014
But-
when we started.
No, but that was a change from last time though, 'cause that-
Well, the change was this.
Right, where is it going now?
The change that we just put in front of you is that we now want to connect the main that's coming here to the main that's coming here. So we just showed an 8-inch, about 100-foot long stretch of 8-inch pipe that connects right there. So now
So that's not
we
looped.
have a double loop.
Well,
yeah,
but it continues up the road to service the two buildings that are now in phase one. And
Okay.
that part is not looped.
So in other words, we have that much of a dead end in phase one.
Right, that's what I was asking. And that's something that, I don't know how that affects, whether that's true looping or not. It's my understanding that it's not. Because the ending of a line is the ending of a line. It's not, it's off a loop, but it's not itself part of the loop. That's my understanding from,
Yeah, well, just understand too that this is, this is gonna be in process. Construction, until you complete it all, you're working toward these things during the construction process, so, depending upon what point in time you wanna stop, you can have it, you're gonna have a dead-end water main.
well,
By the time you get to the end of the project, you're not.
Yeah.
but phase one is phase one, and one of the conditions is that it be a looped water main. So that's one question I'm identifying, and thanks for pointing that out, that's all.
So it was just one more thing.
Yeah,
As far as the notion of whether this is a substantial change or not. Like I said, we laid this down in front of the zoning board in 2014.
yeah,
We met with the sewer and water commissioner, the commissioners in that process. They gave, every time the plans were revised, it was redistributed, there was feedback from them. So at this point, the water department has seen what we've done here and, approved it. The only change we're making is we're now connecting right here. That's the only new thing that the water department is gonna see.
But you're
And I
asking,
guarantee you that they're gonna say, oh, okay, well, that's good, you're looping it yet again.
yeah,
So it's, for my money at least, it's a very minor change.
okay.
And it's not something that's new to them as far as, project-wide, it's not new to them at all. It's the same thing they've been seeing for the last 10 years,
Except that now it's phased.
except for that connection.
And also that it's phased so that there are 2 or 3 structures that are on a non-looped water system.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many buildings would be connected to that extension? 2 or 3?
Let me go to that sheet again.
I see 3, lots 49, 50, and 51,
Or 51 as well?
or parcels, whatever you want to call them.
Oh, wait a minute.
And then
okay.
lot 52 looks like is, well, that's,
Yeah. it
so
would-
those are
so we're
temporary
talking about-
stockpiling, but then you'll be building
Right.
on those as well,
Yeah.
so,
So there'd be, if everything stopped right there,
yeah.
there'd be 4 lots on that dead end.
Okay, so you're not including 38?
You're,
No, 38 could be off of that.
I'm sorry, where's 38? Can you just find?
Yeah, 38 is here, kind of where the cut through is, and then the 4 that would be on the branch line are 49 through 52. I mean,
49, 50, 51,
and 52, yeah.
and where's 52?
52 is right here.
52
So it's got a
is-
hatch over it because
Yeah,
they're
it's a
using it
stage.
as a stockpiling, but once the stockpiling operation is done, they would build that out.
Oh, that's to be built in phase 1,
Yes.
includes lot 52, but not 38?
No, 38 also.
Oh, 38 also, but
Yeah.
that's connected to
Yeah.
the.
It's connected to the loop, yeah.
Yeah, 38,
Okay.
I think the house would face that.
Thank you.
short strip.
I got it.
I think for me, the biggest concerns here are the traffic flow. It's not clear what really happens there. I mean, the street just dead ends, right? It's a
Yeah.
double wide street and it just dead ends. And then the dog park and the playground are in the same location as they were before. So technically, they're built as part of phase 1, but they're not really accessible. How does someone get back to the
How
playground?
far does the road go? Does it stop at the limit of phase 1 line?
Well,
You know what?
That's what the limit of work line is, so.
You're right about that. This line that represents the limit of phase 1 should actually cross the road right here.
So
And it
you would-
should include that, because just for the sake of these catch basins also feed into the stormwater. Although
But
those wouldn't necessarily
Yeah,
have
I
to be
would-
built as part of phase 1.
By the time you get to like constructing another cul-de-sac or something back there, you've done almost all of phase 2.
You've done all of phase 2.
I calculated it out, you're down to
15.
26% taken out. So now it's more like a 75-25 instead of a 50-50.
Yeah, and, maybe we're sort of straining over something that's not as
Yeah.
big an issue as it.
Yeah, so that being said, if I might, so I found the condition specifically from the settlement agreement, I'll read it on phasing. So, and this may speak to these details. It says, "There shall be no phasing of the project unless the applicant returns to the board with a specific phasing plan, which shall be reviewed under 760 CMR 56, but the applicant shall provide the board with peer review funds and grant a reasonable extension of time to allow the board to determine whether the modification is substantial and requires a public hearing." So that's what we've been kind of operating under. I think we've mentioned peer review a couple of hearings ago.
Yeah.
And
lost.
we didn't think we needed it. If the water department, wants to comment on it, I think whatever it is, let's just come up with a game plan to kind of make some progress. And
Agreed. Yeah,
I think what's probably more critical to us is confirming the January date. So then that gives everybody more time just to say, okay, maybe we'll go back, do some of these details. We can meet with the board before August recess. I don't know if you meet in August, but hopefully we can kind of,
we meet all the time.
We meet all the time.
hopefully we can resolve it before
You think
then.
we're Congress? We don't have recess months, so far anyway, unless Nick.
Um,
No, don't get excited over that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I thought you were the boss, so.
I mean, in terms of the date, I personally was pretty comfortable with the determination that you had, and I think we exhausted that with Ms. Wetzel, and she was pretty comfortable. I remember her saying, just want to double check, but it wasn't a major concern. I actually think she had more concern over the looping of the water main than the
Right.
date. So I would be okay with, I would be comfortable with at least confirming the date, that way we can at least move forward, but that's me, it's up, that would, I don't know how they feel.
My memory is the same, but I thought she wanted to count it herself or get back to us after, I don't know, after looking at the file decision or the decision that was in the file. I can't tell you more than that. My memory obviously is not the best of that meeting tonight. But I agree, I don't think the date was going to be an issue. What is the date now, however? Is
So
it,
we assert that it's January 21st, 2025.
but if it's
The
not.
only question
it
was
would be
whether
July
it was the
14th.
date that the settlement agreement was
Right.
signed by the parties versus endorsed. If it was signed by the parties, it's July, in which case we have to add another, you guys made quick work of it
Right.
when Lynn Sweet requested
Right.
it, but I think we were trying to just avoid that additional request altogether. If we can, if the board votes to ratify and confirm that the expiration date is January 21st, 2025, then the applicant can, per the language in here, we
Yeah.
can consent to an
Why don't you
extension.
vote on that? Is there a motion, so is it a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I just don't understand why we have to vote on a date.
Because it's in the permit right now, and an appeal took over the permit.
There's actually no date. It was the
Yeah.
board that raised the question initially as to whether the permit is valid. So when the board raised the question,
Right.
we need a determination that, yes, we agree the permit's valid.
Okay.
I agree,
Is what-
and I
yeah.
understand.
Yeah, I remember us questioning it.
We
but
thought it was dead,
Right.
because
Right.
we assumed it was dead.
This was like on the very first meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
that's what.
applicant said, no, here's what's been going on
And I
in the last
agree,
6
yeah,
years, 8
we all, I
years.
think we all agreed, but we just wanted to confirm with Amy.
Right, so I suggest going forward with that vote. I mean, it's the same thing as extending, as the applicant says, as we did last time for the other project. It's in our interest just to put that aside. On that motion,
I'll
is there a
second
second?
Jim's motion.
Any further discussion? And what is the precise,
January 21st, 2025.
that'll be reflected in the motion. I'm gonna call for a vote now. Mr. Tenori?
Yes,
Mr. Spangler?
Yes.
Mr. Noel, yes. So that is now,
yeah, that makes
I don't know
sense.
what we call that, whether that's a modification or.
That's satisfactory to
Yeah,
me.
okay.
I
Yeah.
think,
We
as
all
long as
agree.
it's reflected in the minutes
Yes,
and
yes.
the board can, reflect that the vote is documented. So,
It's on camera, so.
perfect, so that solves that. Then, I think the question is, and
Yeah.
again, I can sign something on behalf of the applicant to extend the 20 days. That's a dead end anyway, like, it's rare that anybody goes that route, but we can certainly extend the deadline to make the determination so that town council can have the time to weigh in. And
Yeah.
I think the question is, we volunteered it before. If you really think you need technical peer review on these limited issues, we can get Graves involved again, just to make sure that we have some progress here. I would suggest that we vet this with the water department, because they were the ones that had the original comment, and nothing else has changed, so,
Are we vetting the current, this current right now,
Yes,
as you're
this
tonight?
plan, this is the plan.
This plan,
Yeah, I
going
mean,
forward.
we already, we're pointing out that there may be, so we may need to make a minor, further change that we would submit, and we can do this collaboratively.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree that the access to, because we did talk about access to the dog park and the.
Right. But I
and
also
the
submit
playground.
that you're talking about like 15 houses here, which I, look, I'm not the applicant, and it seems like we're going through a ton of hoops for 15 houses. And again, it's not my money, so I'm just pointing this out, like,
Yeah.
if we keep going, we're gonna end up at 10 houses here, or like 12 houses.
I think when we addressed it, we kind of did, and it happens in planning, a little bit of whack-a-mole.
Yep.
In that, we thought the plan was where it needed to be, and then the issue of the recreation was raised.
Yep.
And that implicates other issues.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
So,
Because we had a question last time, Mr. Gallagher, I think, said, well, I'll have to look at whether we can move it somewhere else.
Right, we were originally gonna
Or-
move it where the house was, but
Or
then that, yeah.
create some access, and this is,
Well, we asked about the drainage, right, and that flagged a big issue, that there's a whole
right,
retention area that really was part of phase one. So there's a lot of due diligence that still needs to occur here.
yeah. And
that-
nobody is suggesting that this is a block or a bad revision,
No,
but
no.
we need some advice from council,
Yeah,
water department, and maybe peer review.
yeah.
How do we have money in peer review right now? Do you know that? Maybe not a fair question to you off the,
No, so how peer reviews usually have worked is that we ask the applicant for the money.
Yeah.
We have the third-party peer reviewer, we get,
But-
peer review money from them.
we've had an account for Island Brook peer review. I don't know if there's zero in it or if there's a couple $1,000s in it.
Yeah, I
don't
can
know.
check to see how much is.
We don't know right
in
now.
balance.
Yeah, we don't know. And you don't know, I assume.
no, I don't know off the top of my head.
Paul Di Giuseppe could, I mean, he knows how to determine
He's
that.
probably at home now.
No, I'm not asking an answer right this minute. I'm just saying tomorrow, I'm sure we could find out. But that's exactly the question, though, how do we proceed so that we move it forward? Without peer review funds in the account, we can't engage anybody, I know that. Graves or anybody else. That's just how peer review, the statute is set up. The money has to be in place. There might be money there already, in which case we could contact Graves and say, we need you to look at this and
But only,
feed the account.
we would have to determine that it's a substantial.
Well, it's being suggested that we just get going with that process without taking that vote, because then it implicates other procedural aspects down the line.
But in terms of the dollars, right, determining that it's a substantial change unlocks the ability for us to get additional funds from the applicant.
I don't believe so.
I thought that's what he had.
Sorry, what's the question? I have a comment to make as well, but what was the question?
Yeah, well, it's fresh, go ahead.
You were reading a note about if the board determines that the changes are substantial, then that unlocks the ability to get funds for additional review. Did I not understand?
No, the funds are discretionary. You can require peer review, and frankly,
Regardless of whether. we
regardless of
determine-
substantial
I
change,
see.
I mean,
Okay.
I
think
would
it's
interpret
a
it
little different.
either way.
I'm sorry. I
So I think we're
misunderstood.
comfortable with that as long as we set the scope,
Yeah.
we don't turn this into a start over, which I don't think is the intent. And Graves is familiar with the project already. Just to kind of bring the whole phasing thing back, when you say 15 units is what we're down to, what it all started with was a condition in the settlement that was very precise, that the settlement said they wanted all infrastructure, like in the general sense, every last bit built before we get the first certificate of occupancy. So it was a very onerous condition to say, we gotta build the entire road before we can even, it might have even been building permit. So it was this idea, and we were saying, okay, well, we'll build the first part, all the infrastructure in the first part, and then we'll do the second part, and that was simply to try to get out from under that occupancy certificate issue. So I don't know, I don't know how we address that, and
Yeah.
frankly, I think, given where we are this evening, the most important thing is that we get some feedback from town council as well, because I know the board relies heavily on her input. We just have to make sure, that we have her attention. I know she has a lot
Yeah.
going on.
Right.
But we can maybe take another look at how that condition is implemented, and to your point, what is infrastructure? How do we define that?
Yeah, that's kind of how this started, right?
That's
We
what
were gonna-
exactly said at the end of the last meeting, though. She just wanted to take a look at infrastructure as a term of art to see,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how we started here. We were gonna go and look at the utilities and things, and then we all realized, oh, there's a whole nother.
And that was our motivation in
Section, yeah.
even proposing the phasing, is we didn't want to build all
Yeah.
infrastructure before we get a first building permit.
which
Right.
does seem a little nutty.
Yeah,
to
don't-
have
don't
to put in a
disturb
road
that.
that just, it
Does.
loops around an empty.
Standard subdivision approval though. Well, phasing will be different, right? You get to a certain phase and then lots will be released by the planning board at a standard subdivision approval. So it's not uncommon to build to a certain extent and have the road to a certain point before a building permit will be issued.
Is that so?
But phasing, again, phasing I would have no problem with, as long as first responders and emergency access was suitable. From my standpoint, that would be fine, right? So typically, phasing could be, for instance, a binder coat on a subdivision would release building permits, would release the lots to the planning board, and Frank could speak to this too, but you would put the road in, put the infrastructure in, binder coat on the road, and then go back to the planning board for lot releases, and at that point could then issue building permits.
Well,
And then-
that was actually one of my questions last time as well, is that the notes call for final coat as part of phase one, which, the town would own that, meaning, construction equipment constructing phase two would be traversing, final coat asphalt, and I don't know, there's finer points to this that I just really think need to be thought out here.
I think you'd want to speak to Jared, the superintendent of DPW too, if you're gonna require final coat on phase one and then have construction equipment and everything else driving over that road.
Right.
To get to phase two, it doesn't,
That road's gonna be
not,
long to the
as you
town.
know, it's not
Oh, yeah.
feasible, right? Because then by the time you get to phase two, your final pavement on phase
Yeah.
one is destroyed.
Yeah.
And the
Is
town has to take care of that if it's a
That's what I'm
public
saying.
road.
Yeah, usually, and we'll talk to Mohammed about that note, and Stonebridge does quite a bit of this.
Yeah, yeah.
And if they did put in the final coat, which I don't believe they do, they'd strip it and if it's damaged. But I think normally they just go to the base course
You would
and
go-
then do a final.
Equipment tears it up that dramatically?
Yeah, you think about the size of the vehicles that are driving over it. I would consult
Didn't realize that.
with Jared if you're considering that. I would tell you to tread lightly with the final coat before construction's done. You can make it a condition of final approval, that final coat and curbing and whatever is done. But you're gonna destroy the road if you final coat phase one
Yeah.
before phase two is done.
Yeah, and we'll check that note as well, just because I don't know if that's Stonebridge's practice anyway.
So all else aside, is it feasible to put a turning radius cul-de-sac in
So
at the
we-
end of that extension?
We're, given just what Frank had pointed out, and this discussion about even the detail on the loop, I mean, we'll take a look at it a little bit further. But you're right, I mean, if we're gonna end up building a cul-de-sac to access that and make sure there's emergency vehicles, we may have to look at another iteration. So these are all good points.
Is a cul-de-sac prohibitive though? I mean, just to turn a,
For
30-foot
just to
fire
do
truck?
phasing, it's probably not. It doesn't make sense to install a cul-de-sac just to phase and then take it out and put the houses in.
Right.
But
Okay.
I think if we need it to access, then we'll have to take a look at how we can accomplish that. I think, let me just read this, because this is what really triggered it. It's
what is that you're reading?
from page 11 of the settlement agreement, section 5, condition C. It's the amended section 5, conditions C, section 11. And this is what triggered our discussion about phasing. And it speaks to the issue of binder course as well. It says all infrastructure, and then parens, which I guess is defining it, utilities, roads, and stormwater management system, sewer and water, shall be constructed as shown in the plan of record as altered by Exhibit 2 prior to the issuance of the first occupancy permit. So that got our wheels turning. Except that hydrants shall be in place and operational before the first building permit to frame the first building is issued, which if we're gonna do that, then essentially that required before building permits
Water
issued,
lines.
you needed everything.
Yeah, you need that.
So that was the requirement that we were like, okay, we gotta phase this. And tie-ins for individual units need not occur until the occupancy permit is sought for the unit. It says the road may only be to binder course until after all building is completed. So that says that contradicts the note.
Yeah, don't do it.
And then it says, provided that proper surety is provided to secure the work when the first occupancy permit, which is normal process.
Yeah.
Any phasing plan that is developed shall address these timing issues. So it's these details. And I think, our plan, we had hoped to get some of this feedback, I think, before the meeting tonight, but it's fine that we're doing it now that we've at least accomplished half the battle and that we understand that we have till January 21st to either request a further extension or request an extension or resolve these phasing issues and get the plan endorsed. So with that, I can confirm as counsel on the record, why don't we set a date certain?
Our next meeting, we do know, is June 20?
June 20th.
Let me look at.
And what night is that? Is that
It's a Thursday.
Thursday?
And it's the Thursday after a holiday, if that matters.
Yeah, I think we did it on Thursday because of the holiday.
Oh,
Oh, that's right, the
19th
Wednesday
is
is
the-
Juneteenth.
Right.
So the 20th. I'm available on the 20th. I can be available on the 20th. So, I would say the applicant agrees to extend any deadline
Under
to
56.
make a determination
Yep.
of substantial and insubstantial change pursuant to 760 CMR 560511, which governs the 20-day time period for substantial changes until June 25th,
Sure,
which gives you, and you don't even need to do a written decision.
No.
That gives you till the 20th. So
I'm comfortable with that.
council agrees to that on behalf of the applicant, binds the applicant. So that gives us till the 20th.
And we'll work out some of these procedural, what comes first. The vote on substantiality or
I guess-
other review.
Would it be prudent to talk to the water department about that line, if they were to do this phasing like it is now, to have that extension not go all the way around, just dead end? Would that be still okay with it looped on the other side? Would it be?
Let's inquire, we'll inquire with the water department.
I was gonna say,
And then also the issue of emergency access was raised for those few
Yeah.
buildings. So we're playing a little bit of whack-a-mole, which is fine, because I think we'll be okay now that we kind of have a plan here. I think the question then is, from the board's perspective, if town council's okay with it and the water department's okay with it and we run it by the fire department, do you need peer review? Because I really want to avoid a situation where we're back on the 20th and you say, hey, we need an
Right, yeah.
engineer. I say, let's just rip the Band-Aid and decide, because I was, I know you need, if you need technical assistance, it's totally in the discretion of the board. I've seen boards that are comfortable with getting the input of the water department and the fire department on these issues. I leave it to the board, but I think just give us some direction either way.
I'd be in favor of it, to be honest. I feel like as we're discussing this, we pick up on one thing and then we say, oh, geez, yeah, that's not picked up. It's like, it really, I'm concerned about the rigor in the phasing plan.
So
and
Graves
I-
Engineering
I
had
would
this
vote for
before,
it.
right? Graves,
Yeah.
and they're still around and you deal with them and,
I
Okay.
haven't dealt with them since.
oh, really?
what are you having peer review there? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but you can only peer review the modifications.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
You
so
can't do
it would
the
be
whole
the
project.
phasing.
Phasing.
And specifically, we would ask about the way it is shown as to the end of phase one
Okay.
loop, or non-looped water, and the extension of the road vis-à-vis emergency access, whether they could make some recommendations as to whether this is reasonable or acceptable, or whether there's some other fix, cost-effective fix that they would recommend
Yeah,
if not.
and I would add drainage as well. You'll have
Well,
runoff.
right.
You'll have runoff from those houses now,
So
49 to 52.
I guess the question to
kind of
pose
Plan West, right?
for peer review is phase one a self-contained adequate phase if it's abandoned at that phase? That would be the question for the peer
That would be the broad question, yeah.
The broad question, right?
We can check tomorrow about the funds in place, if there are. I thought there was some in place. I thought I saw an email on this in the last 6 months when this all came up. But I have to look back. That it was a small amount, but this and a couple other
Yeah.
projects. The town accountant, keeps track of all that.
Okay, so I think just with that, that question, maybe you can, the chair can consult with town council. And I think when we first met, we knew we were going to be coordinating with town council. We really could use some dialogue there, so I know,
Right.
I know it's difficult to
We
squeeze
agree.
in the schedule, but hopefully.
Is Mr. Gallagher anticipating then changing some features here on this?
As I'm looking at it, I
And that's
think so.
fine,
Yeah.
I'm not pinning that on you or blaming or anything, but in my communication with council and with the water department, I want to be able to say that we're looking at these things, and we're going to
Honestly.
ask about Graves Engineering and communicate the need for some funds, if there is a need for some
Yeah.
funds.
I think it's sensible to just put these lots in phase two. We'd have to build that section of the road to get access to the recreation. But if we take those lots out of phase one, then we don't have an issue of tapping into a dead-end water main anymore.
Does that
Do you-
whack-a-mole hurt your
Well,
affordable?
Yeah, but you're still
We can
doing all
hold
the
one.
catch basins and,
Yeah, so
you're-
you gotta carry that cost, but, I mean, if we just took those lots out of it and put them into phase two,
I see.
yeah.
then by the time they come online, that loop's been put in place.
That solves the water question, but not the emergency access.
I think
Well, you
saying-
wouldn't have it, because you wouldn't even go down, but your dog park and your other stuff would be gone.
I mean, the dog park and the
It stays up there,
playground
so
are for the
that-
people who live
That
there.
has to be built.
He's
They-
saying
they-
the road
yeah.
They just walk
So-
down.
Oh, they'd walk down.
Yeah.
Okay.
But wouldn't that still need to be
You
accessible?
would need some type of access, potentially.
Yeah, I mean,
I
So
can
what-
reach out to the deputy of the fire department and have
I mean,
that
we
in
could-
writing from him in an
yeah.
email.
We could,
If that
I mean,
helps.
short of a cul-de-sac, we could probably put a hammerhead turnaround, just a gravel hammerhead to, for
Okay.
a turnaround, so.
Yeah, it's probably whatever the fire.
so look at that
I'll speak
and
to them.
talk to us sooner rather than later, and we're gonna ask about funds right away, and find out about getting Graves, and see if we can advance that right away without, going back to the applicant immediately for further funds, but if we have to, then, we'll communicate that in the next few days.
Okay, I'll confirm in writing tomorrow the June 25th extension,
And the June 20 meeting.
in the June 20 meeting, and I'll summarize, our
Sure.
takeaway on the discussion.
Yeah.
And that's,
And
I think,
Yeah, well,
are there any other questions or comments on this plan? I think, emergency access to the houses, double checking, the roadway limitation here, the binder course note.
Seems it.
Yeah,
So,
the,
we're gonna generate a revision probably before it goes to peer review.
Yes,
Just
yeah,
so-
That's what I was,
Yeah.
that's exactly why I was asking.
right.
So we'll do this, it'll go back and forth, but let's communicate in the next week or so about where you are and where we are on peer review and all of that, so we
Right.
can we don't have to skip another meeting.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah,
I've been CCing Brian with my emails to town council. I don't know if the chair, Mind?
No, I would like to be
Email?
CC'd. I mean, we don't have any objections to us being CC'd either.
okay, I think we just have to be cautious.
Yeah, I
with
think you
CCing
can't make all of
everybody.
us because
Oh,
it
Yeah,
would be
I
a
just had it has to
quorum.
be
but-
through one, but I can
Because
communicate
of-
to the chair, certainly.
Sure, yeah, include me if you can on.
Yeah, and so Brian, if you wouldn't mind sending me the chair's email, just so I definitely have it, and then
Write it down.
that might help.
If it's working. Yeah, it works.
I can write it down if you.
That would be helpful, thank you.
Do you have paper?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I have his address, I can email him too. I can email
Can we,
his
can we
legacy.
talk more too, for your list about the infrastructure piece too? And, you know, what that is and making sure all that's on the plans, we don't have to walk through it tonight, but,
Yeah.
and what portions of the infrastructure are now going to extend up.
Yep.
You know, we'll want street lighting and all that kind of stuff to go all the way up.
Does the plan call for street lighting?
No, I don't think we have.
Usually these are
I thought-
dark sky.
Really?
Small
I thought
ones.
they were.
It was.
But we do have all the utilities.
The bylaw,
If
but
you-
it was approved.
If you look at the plan and profile
Okay.
sheets, you were saying you weren't sure that the utilities were detailed. But if you look at the plan and profile sheets, you'll see that they are detailed on
Oh, I saw
that
the,
series.
yes, the sheet that you're on now, I saw the
You know,
details, I
it
just,
shows you, you know,
I
a
didn't see like
profile
electrical.
with
Right.
what's underground, and then in
Yes.
plan view, where
Yes.
the locations are. So that
Namely, I
shows
didn't
how
see
you
like
can see
electrical, but maybe I missed it.
Thank you.
Maybe I
Well,
missed it.
electrical, we don't generally show because what happens with the typical subdivision, which this
Uh-huh.
really is the utility company designs the electrical system. We give them an approved plan,
Oh,
and then they
Okay,
take it from
so
there.
you still provide the plan.
Yeah,
Um,
and then they
Okay.
take it and they say, okay, we're gonna put a transformer on this lot corner.
Okay.
and,
I think it's an important aspect. If it's not required by per the bylaws, then obviously don't need it, but if it is, we should have it, you know.
Yeah, and then I think the only question is the timing, and again, that, it all related back to this idea, all infrastructure. So your suggestion would be, to the extent of any lighting, it would be pre-first occupancy permit?
Yes, I think that's what we talked about last time, is because of the way the condition is written. I
Yeah,
think
'cause it
says-
calls out-
I think it says before the,
I don't remember lighting specifically.
It didn't call out lighting, but I think the
That
question
was
last
the
time was
question.
define what infrastructure includes.
Right. right,
And you're saying to the extent the plan shows lighting, you wanna
Right.
see that as part of infrastructure that's completed before the first occupancy permit.
so it's kind of a sub-phasing, right? It's like, what's going to be done, you know, sidewalks, road, to what level of the road? We talked about binder.
So binder, right,
Um,
yep.
I don't know, that to me anyway is all kind of infrastructure.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah, street lighting, just, you know, fire hydrants.
Great.
Frank, was this street lighting proposed in the original approved plan?
No.
What about light poles at the end of the driveways, supplemental as opposed to street lighting?
That, we never, I don't think we ever talked about it. And
No.
there was no, I don't believe there was any condition that even
Yeah, I
mentioned
don't think it was in the
even
plan,
mentioned that.
and more modern, more of the most recent subdivision I've been involved in, I don't know if Norton has a preference for it, but a lot of towns are doing dark sky for these subdivisions. and
Yeah.
There's just the ambient light from people's, living room is enough
Yeah.
just to give a little bit of a sense of what's going on.
Seeing like more so light poles at the end of the driveways.
Yeah,
Right, so they're, like you said, it's more ancillary to the residents as opposed to a light pole in the street, the tradition like you used to see.
Yeah.
I guess I was thinking mostly of the park. You know, it's a public space, it's gonna be pretty separated from the neighborhood. You know, if it's not required per the bylaws, it's a done deal.
I'll go through and cross some Ts and dot some Is and make sure,
It's
but
just a safety thing.
So I think that's generally a small request. I do think we
Yeah.
do have to stick to the original approval to some degree.
Yeah.
but-
That's what I mean.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, it has to
Maybe you
comply
can.
too to the
Right.
bylaws regardless, right?
Well,
Yeah.
Well, you gotta
No,
go by the
so-
bylaw when it was originally approved,
Right.
outside
Okay.
of whatever modifications you're
Okay.
dealing with now. So I can, like, again, I can go back and see
Okay.
if there was anything back then, but,
and
But it didn't have to.
and if it's not there, I don't, that's a question for, legal question for Amy, if you can now impose something like that, but
I think that's part of the substantial, insubstantial question. I think Amy has said that before. If conditions have changed, we may need to delve into something, but I don't know
yeah.
if that's part of it.
Yeah, so that's, like, again, like you were saying, it's, some of the stuff, when it was approved, may not have been what it is today.
Right.
And we can't just impose something now because it's now a bylaw and it wasn't back then. But that's a question for council through the chairman or whoever, and see what she wants to say about that, but.
Okay.
all right,
Thank you for helping us out again and helping us through this, to see a way forward.
no, I think we made some progress. We at least, confirmed the date, so we have that confirmation in place, and now we can navigate this phasing question, and it really is just figuring out how we're gonna deal with this condition. So now that we have more input, and we'll see if we can continue to cross off these open issues and not get
Okay.
any moles popping back up.
Agreed.
All right.
Anything else of the permit holder at this point?
Nope.
Thank you both for
Thank you.
bringing it forward.
Would it help to provide some comments, I can type up and send them to you, Tom, or, I don't know,
I
I don't know how that works.
I try to memorize everything and we have the video, but
Okay.
certainly if you have comments, it would be very helpful, yeah.
just,
They have to go into the record, and
oh, okay, I don't,
No,
I
it's
don't
fine.
wanna complicate it, but.
it's not complicated. I'm just saying we'd have to print them up and put them in the record.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you have to
Communication.
send them to me, Brian, and then I can
Forward
give it
to
to
all.
everybody.
I feel like that's fair to you all.
That would be
to
very
have-
helpful,
to have
yeah.
Something you can reference
Yeah.
back to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the board will continue to June 20th.
June 20th.
Yes, we will, and we'll communicate in the meantime. Is there a motion to continue this till June 20th at 7:05?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Mr. Tenori?
Yes.
Mr. Spangler?
Yes.
Mr. Noel, yes. Thank you.
Great, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
So the other one will go first on June 20th.
Samoset?
Samoset, right, unless they resolve that otherwise. Okay, anything else tonight? Question, we had an email today to sign up for another system. Is that to be ignored if we're not on the health system? It says even if you don't have town insurance, you have to sign up, and I don't know what that meant. Do you know what it was?
I don't think that would have to do with you guys.
I
That's-
don't think so.
Navigator accounts?
There
That's
you
for
go.
employees only.
Yeah.
I'm not employed.
Is that just health insurance?
Benefits, I think.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it
it
doesn't
says-
apply to us. Yeah, okay.
It says for employees, so.
Yep, but employees and email addresses, I got you. That's fine, that's fine. Thank you.
You know?
Nothing else to come before us tonight, so let's carry on this in the days ahead, and thanks, Nick, for your help and guidance, and thanks, Brian. All set? We can call the meeting, motion to adjourn at, my watch is dead,
8/16 on my
8/16.
8:16.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Actually,
I seconded.
Thank you.
yeah, but I did see 2 chat things up there. I just saw it.
Oh.
That was Charlene saying that she couldn't hear, and I confirmed with her that we could hear.
Okay, all right, so, yeah.
And so that's why there's 2.
Okay,
Thanks, though.
I just looked up and went, wait, let me make sure we're good.
Yep.
All right, thank you.